This is a Dreamcast disc and is for use only on a Dreamcast unit. Playing this disc on a hi-fi or other audio equipment can cause serious damage to its speakers.
Dreamcast, up to 6 billion players.
Welcome back to the stage of history.
Why don't we play together?
Hey, it's time to make some crazy money. Are you ready? Here we go!
Please stop this disc now.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the DreamPod from the Dreamcast Junkyard. Thank you for joining us on another deep dive into the world of Dreamcast related news. Yep, there's so much going on in the Dreamcast scene that it's sometimes a little bit hard to keep up with it all. We've got new games, unreleased games, new hardware, games coming back online. It's a bit bewildering to be honest, but we'll try to get you up to speed. First though, introductions. My name is Tom. And I'm joined on this episode once again by Lewis. Hello, Lewis. How are you doing?
Hello, Tom. Yes, I am good. Yeah, I am also feeling a bit bewildered by the amount of Dreamcast stuff. I feel like when I was helping to prepare the list for this episode, we just kept coming up with more stuff. So it was like, how are we going to fit it all in? So yeah.
Yeah, it's cool though. It's cool. And I also listened back to two of the previous episodes we did, the one with Shenmue Dojo and the one with the guys from Dreamcast Years. And in both of the intros to those podcasts, you had some ailment, you had an ear infection or something wrong with your nose. Are you feeling strong today? Are you feeling good and healthy?
I am spotless today. I'm
Brilliant.
Healthy.
Good
I'm
to
taking my vitamins. I'm ready to go.
Fantastic. We are also joined once again by Lozz. Welcome back to the podcast, Lozz.
Evening all. Pleasure to be back on. I think
It's always a pleasure.
Lewis, given that he's in tip-top condition, excellent health, I'm surprised that he hasn't been called up for the World Cup already.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would have preferred to have had Lewis in the team than Harry Maguire, but that's football. We're not going to go down that route. Great to have you back on the pod, Loz. And finally, making a well overdue return to the DreamPod. It's the enigma wrapped in a mystery. His name is Kev. Welcome back, Kev.
Hello, I am a free man. I am making this appearance willingly. I am not a prisoner of Mike. Any threads suggesting otherwise are false.
Blink if that's true. Blink twice if that's true.
You know it's not true because if I was a prisoner of Mike, I would be helping him move his immense Dreamcast collection. So there would be no time for me to appear on this podcast.
This is true. This is true. I was looking back through the podcasts that we've done in the past, and I believe your last appearance on the DreamPod was back in December 2021 when you did your Desert Island discs. So it's a bit of a hiatus, but you're back now. That's the most important thing. So welcome back to the podcast. So yeah, let's just jump in. I said at the top of this podcast that it's a news cast because there's so much going on, but I thought we should just do a little bit of a round table very briefly and just talk about let's pick one game that we've been playing recently, either on the Dreamcast or on a modern gen system. I'm going to go back in the same order that I started. So Lewis, I'm going to come to you first. What's one game you've been playing on any console?
Oh no! Seeing as you've only limiting it as to one game, that means I have to mention a PS2 game. Sorry. So. Oof. Although people who listen, who check out this game may be pleasantly surprised. So I did tweet about this, that I was playing a game called Evolution Skateboarding, which is Konami made a Tony Hawk clone. Like, it is literally the same buttons, everything, but it's like, imagine if we didn't have MTV skateboarding on the Dreamcast and there was another skateboarding game that wasn't shit. This feels like it could have just been on the Dreamcast because it has like the arcade flair, like even to the fact that you have like an announcer who's got sort of like Sega Bass fishing energy when you do tricks. He's like kickflip, you know, board slide, all this. He's got this like really funny voice, and he the whole time. Oh, and he also insults you if you fall over as well, which is funny. He's like, you better try that again or whatever. But yeah, it's basically a Tony Hawk clone that has boss battles. Yeah, like there's a bit where you fight vampires and giant skeletons, and I completed the career mode as Colin McKay, skateboarder. Fans will know him. And I unlocked.
I said Colin McRae then. I was like,
no,
this game sounds insane.
Rest in peace, right? Is Colin? Did he?
Did.
No, rest
Yeah,
in
he
peace.
did. Yeah.
Colin McKay, the vert skater. But yeah, I played it through as him, and I unlocked Solid Snake as a playable character. So in this game, you can skate as Solid Snake and Raiden and Frogger and the dude from Castlevania, and it's just nuts. And
It sounds like the skateboarding version of Cannon Spike.
yeah, it's just Konami just throwing all this mud at the wall before they went rubbish. And so it's kind of a janky clone of Tony Hawk, but because it has all this kind of Konami wackiness, it's kind of worth playing. So yeah,
That sounds really interesting. What's it called again? Sorry.
Evolution Skateboarding. Yeah.
Cool game. Lozz, what have you been playing?
I haven't really been playing a whole lot, to be honest. Same kind of answer as the last time I was on. I'll save us by mentioning a Dreamcast game, shall I?
Go on, do it.
I've been playing a fair bit of Phantasy Star Online. There's currently an event going on, which periodically Silverant host, and so basically it's massive incentive to get online and rack up some kills and some points and try and win some prizes at the end of it. But aside from that, I have been eyeing up and watching some...
One game. You only have to pick one. Fantasy Star Online. That's it.
Yeah, okay, sure.
I don't make the rules. I just enforce the rules. Cool. Fantasy Star Online. Let's go over to Kev. Kev, what have you been playing? Enlighten us.
I'm going to go with a game I've played most recently, which is UFC 4, which I'm lucky enough that I have an Xbox in the room where I work. I'm a teacher, which I've probably mentioned before. We have an Xbox that we play on at break time, and that's our popular game at the minute. We have a champion wrote up on the board, and I spend most of the lunchtime riling the kids I work with up about whether they're worthy to fight the champion or whether they need to do other stuff. I've basically turned myself into a wrestling promoter.
I thought Mr. Cooper was the coolest teacher ever, but I think you've usurped him with your in-class. What is it? An Xbox or just to go over the ridiculous branding of the Xbox. It's an Xbox One X, and at least 5 times a week I find myself explaining to a teenager, it's not the new Xbox, it's not the old Xbox, it's the 4K Xbox One. And then they're like, I've made the mistake of once taking in the original Xboxes sometimes last year, so some of the kids still remember that. So they're like, oh, so is this the one you had when you were a kid? It's like, no, that one didn't do 4K. What's wrong with you? How can you get that wrong, you idiot?
Like the youth of Britain.
Brilliant. Oh, that's really cool. Briefly, I have been playing mainly on Steam in the recent past. I've been playing Quake, the Steam release, just because it's got loads of additional content that you can mess around with, loads of mission packs that you can just have a quick play around with. And I also bought a new mechanical keyboard, and I'm just going to let you hear the sound of it in all its glory. You know, when you're doing a podcast and like someone will mention something, and you quickly like jump onto like Google and search for it. Well, I can't really do that anymore because this is what my keyboard now sounds like. You hear that? It's ridiculous.
It sounds like blue switches to me, Tom.
I think they're actually red.
Oh, as I say, I don't know what that term means, but I see it around a lot.
I've just inadvertently turned my really noisy PC on as well by doing that, so I'm going to have to shut it down now. So excuse me for like just a peek behind the curtain. Yeah, so Quake, that's what I've been playing on the old PC. So yeah, good mix there. Only the one Dreamcast game, but we will come back to Dreamcast quite heavily over the next hour and a bit or so.
I kind of want to know what Lawrence's other thing was now.
Well, I mean.
No, it's not that.
We're gonna have to let people. We're gonna have to let people like maybe just. I don't know.
I was just
speculate.
Joking.
Yeah. Okay. Just touching briefly on something that Lozz mentioned, actually, Phantasy Star. There is, or there has been another recent the news recently broke of another passing of a Sega stalwart, if that's the right word, Reiko Kodama, game developer, heavily involved with the development of games and series such as Phantasy Star and Skies of Arcadia. Passed away, sadly, in May this year, I believe, according to IGN. Her passing was kind of kept quite quiet, and it was only through eagle-eyed people who spotted it was a memorial in the credits of the new Mega Drive Mini 2 console that it kind of came to the fore. Reiko joins other sort of luminaries from the world of Sega in the recent past, having passed away. Mr. Yukawa, of course, and of course Bernie Stolar as well. So sad times for her family, and for the whole Sega community really. So rest in peace. I just thought it would be nice to mention her at the top of the show. But let's move on to why we're here, and it's Dreamcast news. There's so much to get through here, and I hope we can do it justice. But I'm going to hand over to you, Lewis, for the first topic, and that is that there's even more new English translations of Japanese games coming to the Dreamcast. And as you are our resident translation expert, I think I'll pass the baton over to you to tell us a little bit more about these games that come into the Dreamcast.
Okay, yeah. So the first one that I feel like it came out ages ago now. I don't know what the time span we're covering in this episode, but not too long ago anyway. A translation, an English fan translation for Puyo Puyo N, also known as Puyo Puyo 4. I don't know why there's two different names for it, but that was released, and it's by a group of individuals called Precise Museum, who I've never heard of until this, because their whole thing is just translating Puyo Puyo from drama CDs in Japan to comics to games like in the Dreamcast version of Puyo Puyo 4. I think they'd already translated it previously on another console, and so obviously they're just brought all of that over to the Dreamcast. So that's been released, and can I just
say at that point, I love how kind of narrowcast and niche that their sort of expertise is. They can pour so much time and effort into it because it's just that one particular game. I love that. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it's I feel like there's a lot of communities like that. I feel like Shenmue, for example. There's it's really cool when so many people gather around one particular franchise. But and then the other game. So there's been two translations released, and the other one is bit more obscure, is Run equals Din as Black Soul. That is the name of the game, and it is a game that I admitted when I wrote my little blog post about it that I'd never heard of it before.
I haven't, no.
Until Rolly announced that they were working on a translation for it with the team. That team has translated other games like Lost Golem, Lack of Love, and probably most notably Submarine Number 6. And so they've translated Run equals Dim as Black Soul, which is a mech-based strategy RPG, and I've not actually had a chance to play it yet, but it does look very interesting. But it requires a lot of reading in the menus, and obviously the whole strategy element and the stats and all that, so you kind of need a translation if you can't speak Japanese. So that's that. And then I have one more thing, which is to do with Sega Gaga, which I'm not going to announce that there's been a translation, unfortunately, but it's kind of like good news anyway. It basically, Megavolt85, who is an absolute genius in the Dreamcast community, who obviously Atomic Wave was one of the things they worked on. Basically, they've cracked the issue that was holding back a Sega Gaga translation, and that is basically the game has, when it shows you characters on screen, it's recalling them from the BIOS of the console itself.
Wow, okay.
And so the problem is with that is that obviously Japanese characters and English characters aren't like the same in that regard, like width and stuff like that. So I asked Derek why this is such a big deal, and he says that basically he's managed to make it so that the game draws from a different section of the BIOS font where it's got narrower letters, basically. So now people, if they are dedicated enough, can translate this game. So yeah, that's kind of a call to arms, I guess. It like the doors have been blown open for Sega Gaga to be translated effectively, and also filling people in, I guess, because if you wondered why there's never been a translation, that was the main kind of thing that was holding that back.
Wow, that's really cool news. And Derek, that's Derek Pascarella for those people who maybe don't know. That's fantastic. I think Sega Gaga represents like one of those holy grails in Dreamcast collecting and in the whole Dreamcast scene. It's because it's revered as this game that is so heavily reliant on a knowledge of the Japanese language, that it's almost like it's dangled tantalizingly in front of your face. There's this amazing game with all these like memes and all this like clout when it comes to the culture of the Dreamcast, but very few people have actually played it. Very few people in the West who can't speak Japanese have played it. So it'd be really cool. I've certainly never played it, so I'd love to be able to jump in and actually experience it for myself as a native English speaker.
I think there's some like translations maybe on YouTube, but it's definitely one everyone wants to play. Like most anticipated game to be translated or re-released or whatever in English.
I know that one of our previous co-hosts, Ross from way back, he did a series of, because he lives in Japan, he speaks fluent Japanese. He basically transcribed the whole game. And you could kind of play it while using his transcriptions. But I mean, to actually just play it in English on a Dreamcast is the dream, really. So that'd be amazing.
I'm aware of so many abandoned efforts to translate Sega Gaga over the years, but it sounds like, aside from just the kind of gargantuan effort that's required to translate the sheer amount of copy that's in the game, that one of the issues was more technical.
Yeah.
And if that's been, if that hurdle's been got over now, then theoretically, I can't see why we couldn't get there in the end. I mean, you look at the amount of money that's raised for some projects now, and it's got me wondering whether we could just crowdfund to have professional translators do some of this. It's super nice when folks do it voluntarily, and they might get there in the end, but maybe that's something to look into.
Yeah, I was looking at it on a slightly tenuously related topic. I remember a couple of months back I put a post up on the Dreamcast Junkyard blog about, it was the video of the press conference where Sega announced the discontinuation of the Dreamcast, and it was a Japanese, it was all in Japanese, and I was actually considering employing a Japanese translator to transcribe and translate the video so I could put Japanese subtitles on. But then I had a bit of a brainwave and I thought, I wonder if you can just click on the auto translate button on YouTube, and it worked. And I was like, why not I just think of that in the first place before I went off getting quotes from Japanese translation services and then having to let them down. So that just came to me random out of the blue. I don't know why I mentioned that, but yeah. Really, really interesting and really cool that these games are getting a new lease of life for a new audience, really. So thank you for that, Lewis. I'm sure you'll continue to update the blog when new translation projects are announced. Mm-hmm. Very interesting stuff. Okay, let's move on to our second topic. That is the VM2 campaign from Chris Dioglu. I'm sorry, Chris, if you're listening to this. Again, I always butcher your name. It's reached its target. It's now closed, essentially, the Indiegogo campaign. You can still order one, though, if you want to. We will put links to the campaign in the show notes for this podcast. But it ended with £166,000 being raised by 1,123 backers at the time that I last checked it. And that's just a great success. I don't think he was expecting it to go anywhere near that. I think he was maybe thinking he might get 10 or 20 people interested. But for the VM2 campaign to get so much attention is just mind blowing. So pleased for him. That's a staggering amount of money, And it's a really great concept as well. For those people who don't know, again, I'll put links in the description to this podcast. But the VM2 is essentially a reimagining a 2022 or 2023 when it launches version of the VMU for the Dreamcast. So it's got a backlit screen, a high resolution backlit screen. You can put a micro SD card into it. I think he's actually updated it now so that it has a USB-C connector, because I think a lot of people were seeing that as a negative, that it had a micro USB adapter. So yeah, it's a great concept and a great campaign, and I'm just really pleased for Chris that he's managed to smash it, as the kids say these days. So that's that. Next up on our list, sorry I'm whizzing through these, we've got a lot to cover, so I'll just crack on with the next thing. Generations from Remute has finally launched. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Remute is a electronic music artist who resides in Germany, and he releases a lot of music through his Bandcamp, but he also releases his albums on sort of defunct platforms. I know that he's done N64 cartridge album in the past, and also I think, was it a Nintendo Entertainment System cartridge? I think it was, but this Generations release is on a Dreamcast compatible CD. I've actually got it in my hand here. I bought it because I just thought this was really cool. I needed to get my hands on it, and I wasn't expecting it to come so early, but it arrived in the post before this recording. So I was really happy that I could experience it for myself and talk about it in a authoritative manner. It comes in a cardboard fold-out case. It's got 15 tracks on the disc. You can play it in a normal audio CD player, but if you put it into a MIL CD compatible Dreamcast, that's important. Not all Dreamcasts are MIL CD compatible, so it's worth checking if yours is before you buy this. If you put your disc into a MIL CD compatible Dreamcast, you get a really cool visual experience which accompanies each track. As I say, there are 15 tracks, and each one has got a different visual kind of experience or scenario, whatever you want to call it. And the cool thing is that these visuals have been created by Duranic, who actually created Stormwind. And there's a few nods to that in the visuals. One of them has the sort of almost like a Kraken-esque squid thing that floats in the background. One of the scenarios is like a play on, the game Tempest or Tempest 2000 or TXK, the Jeff Minter game, where the ship kind of spins around and shoots things as these things crawl up the web. Some of them are better than others. Some of them are just like sort of shapes and ambience. Or some of them actually have like 3D models like floating around. But yeah, it's really cool. Would I recommend it to anyone who doesn't like electronic music and isn't like a super Dreamcast nerd like me? I don't know. I don't know if it's worth the £24 or €24. They're both pretty much the same now, aren't they? Pounds and euros. But it's a cool curio, and I just thought it was worth mentioning on the podcast. Kev, you said that you had some of Remute's other albums. Is that right?
No, that was not me, I don't think.
Was it not?
I was very interested by this. Probably one of the few people that I have listened to a CD recently on a Sega Saturn purely to witness the spaceship graphics, which was probably why. Do you remember? People remember this?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, brilliant.
So that when you were describing that was just like, wow, this is. Now I'm like, if you put this CD in the Sega Saturn, will it upgrade that spaceship Dreamcast graphics?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say yes, but no. It's funny you mentioned the Sega Saturn actually, because my first ever taste of CD and graphics was on a Sega Saturn back in the day. I remember looking through my mum's CD collection one day before I even had the Saturn, and I noticed on some of them they had this CD and G graphics logo. I wondered what it was. I obviously didn't have the internet then, so I couldn't really check it out, just like jump on Google or something. And it was only like a few years later when I got the Saturn and I realised that it had the CD and G compatibility. I remember, my mum's got some discs with that logo, and I'll go and get some and see what happens. And I put them in, and I don't know what I was expecting, but as you mentioned, Kev, that spaceship thing is quite cool. But with the CD and G compatible discs, it just kind of, it was just like teletext. You know what I mean? These really like rubbish pictures of like, I can't remember what any of the CDs were now, but they were, most of them were like soul music, because that's the kind of music my mum was into. Mm-hmm. And it just had things like a rose would come up on the screen, and it was like a teletext rose. with like text at the bottom lighting up, the lyrics. It was pretty underwhelming, to be honest, but thanks for reminding me of that just there, Kev.
You say underwhelming. That sounds amazing. And next time I'm in a charity shop, I don't even care what the albums are. I'm going to be buying any that have got that logo on it.
Yeah, CD&G, it's worth looking it up.
So was the Dreamcast supposed to work with other... Is this like a one-off, or because I know Mill CD was like a thing, and then obviously it's mainly known now for the fact that it was exploited to play pirated discs. But when you had those, like, was it like karaoke discs? Would it have done a similar thing?
No, I don't think so, because this essentially is it's using the Mill CD to basically trick the Dreamcast into thinking it's running a game, because it doesn't just play like a CD. Like, it doesn't just go into the CD in the BIOS. It actually loads up as if it's a game. It grinds through it, and the big Sega logo comes up, and then it just dumps you straight into like the remute logo pops up on the screen. It says press any button, and then you're into the music tracks, and you can just like skip left and right or up and down, and then each one just has a different sort of pre-programmed visual background. So it's not really the same as CD&G. It's tricking the Dreamcast into thinking it's a game. But it's a good question, actually. I think this is actually the first CD released for the Dreamcast that has this kind of functionality. I don't think it's been done before. I might be wrong. If I am, please correct me. But I don't think that there's ever been a dedicated music CD released with this kind of capability for the Dreamcast. So it's unique in that sense, I guess.
Yeah.
I almost forgot to mention as well. You do get 2 free balloons in the blister pack when it comes, and I'm still asking myself why you get these balloons. But I suppose it's a nice promotional item if you like balloons.
Well,
I suppose I don't.
Balloons and techno music, Say
no more.
There's
Say
something
no more.
nefarious going on there. But they could send the next one out with a whistle and
Maybe some glow sticks or something.
Yeah.
I will put by the time this podcast goes out, I will have put a video up on the Dreamcast Junkyard blog, so you'll be able to see what I'm talking about, and you'll be able to see the balloons as well, because that's the key thing here for me. But yeah, that's Remute from Generations, and again, links will be in the show notes if you want to go and check it out for yourself. Right, I've spoken enough. I get sick of the sound of my own voice, at least of all when I'm editing these podcasts. But I'm going to, again, stop talking now, and I'm going to hand over to one of the other guys. This time it's you, Lozz. The rotating chair has landed on you. Not physically, obviously, but you're going to talk to us about some interesting developments in the realm of previously hitherto unknown, unreleased games. So, the floor is yours.
Yeah, they just keep coming, don't they? I mean, the thing is, though, I suppose, is that they don't just drop out the sky. All of these unreleased titles that were so sadly scrapped and put on the scrap heap back in the day, they only really come to light because people are prodding around and trying to get people to leak them. But yeah, so we've recently heard from PC Wizard, who we seem to be mentioning in every pod that he's up to something.
We have to. It's the law. We've got it. It's in our terms and conditions. We've got to mention PC Wizard at least once in every podcast. So we've fulfilled that quota now. So please carry on.
We get hopefully we get a bonus if we mention it 10, 20 times. I'll have to speak with him, but he has uncovered some interesting information about an unreleased title called Legend of the Blade Masters, and I'm not a big fan of that as a title, but it's an action RPG game that was basically totally complete. I think back in 2000 or 2001, and it was due to come out on the Dreamcast, and then it was scrapped because the publisher Ripcord Games went bust, and so what PC Wizard has found out is he's managed to get in contact with some of the developers that were involved with this. And he's realised that the rights to the game actually reverted to the development company that is owned by a single person. And so it's relatively straightforward in comparison to some of these other games where the copyright is quite complex and they have to be leaked surreptitiously by an unnamed person. In this case, PC has discovered who owns the rights, and he's actually managed to speak with them as well. And the amazing thing is that they've actually had their eyes open to the kind of burgeoning indie scene that's about with the Dreamcast, and they are seriously interested in the possibility of releasing the game independently. So, I mean, you know, what we could see here potentially is a brand new retail release of a game 20 years on from it being scrapped, which is it's quite a milestone, really.
It is. I love these stories. Again, we've mentioned this in the past. I don't know how PC Wizard or anybody who does this kind of work actually does it, but it's fascinating, and it's just really exciting to know that even more games are out there that could potentially come to the Dreamcast. This reminds me a little bit of, do you remember a few years back there was a Millennium Racer, Y2K Millennium Racer, which was found by somebody called Japanese Cake, which I still think is a fantastic name. And then that was released. That was completely finished as a game, but just never released. And it was found on a dev kit and then given to the Dreamcast community and put online for free. If Legend of the Blade Masters was given to somebody like, I don't know, like Wave Game Studios or some other publisher that could do a proper professional job on it with the the manuals and the cases, this is big. This is really cool.
Mm-hmm. And I think as well, there's a certain segment of the community that haven't really shown much interest in indie titles, which is fine. They're into the Dreamcast because of the existing library it has, and maybe indie titles in their view, they're not all that interested in them because at the end of the day they're produced by small teams, sometimes single man, single woman teams, and so the games are inherently limited. But in this instance, presumably it's a game that had quite a bit of investment and kind of a full studio working on it. So I hope that they can pull it off and that the trail doesn't go cold. But we just kind of anticipate it and wait to see what PC Wizard reports next.
Cool. I mean, this game, the name is familiar. It was a known quantity back in the day, wasn't it? It was one of them games that was kind of announced, and it was always like in the news snippets, or this game is coming out soon. But then it just kind of disappeared off release schedules, and nobody knew why. But obviously now we do. So that's fantastic work.
Personally, never heard of this, but just to echo Tom, there is quite a lot of info out there if you type this name in. Personally, I disagree with Lozz. I think it's a brilliant name. It sounds like a knockoff toy you would have got based on the He-Man universe. Legend of the Blade Masters. Legend of the Blade Masters is just as good as Masters of the Universe. I don't know what you're talking about. But I found a little summary here. So it says, a world of sword-clashing battles, powerful magicians, and political intrigue awaits you in Legend of the Blade Master. I've obviously added the dramatic voice, but it's all caps for the Dreamcast. And then this is on IGN, 52 images, and then it says it's got online, which I know that they just made up because it was IGN Dreamcast stuff. If you ever look into that, it was quite clear that there was like two guys in the basement that no one else spoke to. Pretty much just print what they wanted on the site. But it'd be really interesting to see where this goes.
Yeah, there's another game in a similar vein to this called is it Heavy Metal Fact 2? Which is actually advertised for the Dreamcast in magazines, and it's in that I've got the Ozfest 2000 program because Sega sponsored the festival, and in that magazine they obviously knew their target audience. There's a big advert for Heavy Metal Fact 2. I think it's Heavy Metal Fact 2, and it says like coming soon to Sega Dreamcast. So that was obviously in development at some point, but no one's ever seen it. So whether that's another game that could, miraculously find its way being found.
I doubt in that title, though, you get to fight vicious orcs, screeching harpies, and rotting mummies.
And rotting mummies. Yeah. Wow.
I have one thing left to add about this, is I feel like maybe compared to Millennium Racer, because they did like repros of that, right? I swear there was like a competition.
Oh yeah, there's a whole cottage industry around that game. Like literally after after it was like launched and just like leaked for free by Japanese Cake, and we reported on it, and then Eurogamer reported on our reporting of that, and inadvertently credited like me with releasing it. I was like, I didn't do anything. I just wrote an article about this guy's findings, and then suddenly it was all over Etsy and all over eBay, and then you get ones in like PAL cases and NTSC cases and with like manuals and all sorts. So yeah, this whole kind of industry just appeared around that game.
But I think compared to that, like I feel like we're in a nice point now with all these indie studios, publishing games, like Postal, for example, where say if Wave or Pixel Heart or whoever published this, money will go back to the developers, and that's nice. That's a really cool thing. Rather than it just being like kind of dumped onto the internet, and then everyone, like you say, everyone on Etsy is like get yourself a copy, and none of that goes back to the original creators. So yeah, I think you'll always
get people though that will be like, oh, release it for free, whereas I think in this case, because the original sort of owner of the IP is still around and has still got it, then I think the work's been done. And if the game is released for a decent price, I don't know, $29.99, then by all means I'd chuck some money at it, rather than sort of screech about it being released for free.
I'll be moaning. What, PC Wizard, why is this not on Games Pass on the Xbox?
I was going to say,
says Windows.
I was going to say, let them have some money. Is it like, I don't know if Lawrence just mentioned this, but isn't the story that they like went bankrupt or something? Like, let them make some money off their work. Bloody cancelled game and everything that was finished.
Well, apparently the publishers went bankrupt.
Yeah.
But the developers, I don't know what happened to the developers, but it was the publishers that went bankrupt, and therefore the rights returned to the developers. And presumably it was already, it might have been 2001, and at that point trying to get another publisher for a Dreamcast game was probably, everyone was cutting ties, was probably going to be a tricky task.
That's tragic, yeah.
I think really I could be convinced to pay it if Kev did the promotional videos.
It's a deal.
There we go, signed, sealed and delivered. Fantastic, done. Right, now speaking of indie games, which this is the most tenuous link ever, you mentioned indie games very briefly there, Lozz, in your last section. We're now going to talk about another indie developer, a sort of one-man band, or rather Lewis is. Lewis, tell us about Dashi No Blast.
Okay, yeah, so developer Voxel, who has also worked on other things before. I think this is the most, I guess. I think he wants to develop this further, whereas previously his projects were like proof of concepts. So there's one called Ruins and Unfungused Game, which I believe you played, Tom. I've not played them myself. Did you like these?
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought they were absolutely brilliant. I told you, I sent a message you, didn't I, after I'd played them. Just to give some context of what we're talking about, Dashi No Blast is this sort of Halloween-themed run and gun style game. Sorry, Lewis, I'm taking over. I'll let you talk in a minute. But so that's been released by Voxel. But in your article on the blog, Lewis, you linked to two other previous demos that Voxel had created. One was for a game jam and one was just a sort of a proof of concept. Ruins is almost like a sort of it reminds me of like Virtual On or something, where you play as like a mech. It's very basic, there's not a lot to it. It's like really literally like there's one arena, you're in like one encased arena, and you can summon or generate like these kind of alien sort of bot things that you can shoot and sort of fly around and kill. But it's just really well done, and there's inertia, there's really cool movement, like really smooth, movement of the actual mech that you're controlling. I thought it was brilliant, and if that could be made into a full game, I'd be like, that's day one for me. That's brilliant. And the other one, Unfungused Game, which is a sort of side-scrolling. It's not side-scrolling; it's sort of single screen. You sort of walk off the side of the screen, and it generates the next screen. You like Flashback, something like that. Mm-hmm. Where you play as this girl with like a sort of big toadstool for a head. It's not as bizarre as it sounds. I think that was created for a game jam in like one day, but it's brilliant. Like the movement of the character and the again, if that was made into a full game, I'd be like, I'm playing that. I'm going to buy that. So I don't know if Voxel listens to the podcast, but if you do, I really love that work that you've done on those two demos. Again, we'll put links to them so you can grab them. You can put them on a what's it called, a GDMU, and play them on your GDMU, or you put them on a CDR and play them. Highly recommended. Even if they're just proof of concept, there's not much to them. You can play them both in like 5 minutes, but well worth a play. Sorry, Lewis, back to you.
All right, yeah, but okay. So Tom mentioned there that the latest project, which was released for Halloween, just in time, a few days before, is Dashino Blast, which is basically a 3D multi-directional shooter. So think like the biggest thing that like I think I made a mistake of comparing it to Cannon Spike, because that's the easiest thing I can think of on the Dreamcast from a 3D sense. Obviously you've got like Xeno Crisis, and maybe older you've got like Smash TV, that kind of game,
or maybe even something a little bit like Millennium Soldier. A little bit, sort of top down sort of shooty game.
Yeah, so basically, if you put this on your GDMU or however you play it, you're gonna probably complete it in like probably less than 2 minutes or something. It is like I say again, a proof of concept. It's very cool. It's like the 3D graphics look great. You're basically a witch on a broomstick, just sort of floating around a graveyard, like shooting all these kind of Halloween ghoulies, but it isn't like, and again, that's the reason why I was like, I hesitate to compare it to Cannon Spike, because there's a little bit more to the game, like this one level. So you shoot all these enemies, and then this gate opens up and more enemies come through, and they're like these pumpkin headed things, and then you shoot them, and then you have to fight a massive pumpkin. And yeah, it was quite so energetic. And I think like I say, I made the mistake of comparing it to Cannon Spike in my blog, because like I think that the most familiar thing was like the way you lock onto enemies, but like this felt smoother than Cannon Spike.
It's funny you mentioned the smoothness. That was the takeaway I got from all of the games. None of them had like jitters, or it just felt like really good to play. Even the little demo ruins and Unfungused, really cool. And it's well worth mentioning the music as well in Dashino Blast. The music is so cool. When you finish the demo, it just kind of goes to a black screen. And I just left it on because it was just really funky. It's like a sort of a techno beat with like these bells and stuff. I said to dinner, there's a game on the Switch called Tesla versus Lovecraft, which has literally got one of the best menu intro music tunes I've ever heard. It's so dramatic. And it reminded me of that a little bit, because I was just like, this is really good. I'm not turning the Dreamcast. I'm just going to leave it, even though it's just a black screen, because this is like a really good tune. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next from Dashino Blast. Okay, should we move on? Let's talk about some of these newfangled online games, shall we? The Dreamcast obviously is a console that has online capabilities, even now in 2022, and more games have been brought back online. Even games that weren't originally released are now online, weirdly. Lozz, do you want to chat a little bit about these games?
Yeah, I can do.
Only if you're feeling up to it, you don't.
Well, I mean, you cut me off earlier about talking about.
Oh, sorry, sorry.
It's a bit cancel culture-y. I might have to speak to someone. Speak here, really, but So I'm gonna be turning this into like the PC Wizard hour, unfortunately, because it's another PC Wizard related topic. But so we've previously reported on the unreleased game DD Planet, which is essentially it's a online multiplayer game that was intended to be a spiritual successor to Choo Choo Rocket, and I always have a hard time explaining it, but I think the best description I can give is that it's kind of like Worms, but it's real time rather than taking turns. And it was totally complete, and another one of these titles that was sadly scrapped at the last minute. And so it's something that we've known about in the community for like a couple of decades. And PC Wizard worked his magic last year. He managed to wrangle a copy from an unnamed developer and put that out into the public. But the hot news now on the block is that a version with working online infrastructure was released on the 29th of September. And massive thanks really to Shuoma, who does a hell of a lot of work in reviving online games on the Dreamcast. But here it wasn't really revival because this game had never actually come out, never been online. So he's gone about creating a server and working his magic on the game file itself to allow online play, and a patch version which allows you to play online through the DreamPod was released on the 29th of September. And so, yeah, it's just amazing that we're getting another online game in 2022. And on the first Friday after it was released, we had around a dozen or so folks all online at the same time, and it was heaps of fun. It doesn't look much when you look at the screenshots or videos of it, but it's really quite a hectic gameplay style, similar to Choo Choo Rocket. And it's got some really wacky elements in there that have just got people scratching their heads in the middle of playing it. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. We had James Harvey, our own James Harvey. He was on, and I think PC Wizard was on. And Pizza Hotline was trying to get on as well. He hasn't managed to get on it yet, so we're going to try and fix that for him. But yeah, it's a great game, and I'd encourage folks to check it out. We can hopefully provide some links in the description for this pod.
Of course, yeah.
I've completely missed this, Lozz. Everyone? How many players is this? Is this 4-player then?
Yeah, it's 4-player. It's very similar to Choo Choo Rocket in terms of the like the menus when you go on to play online. It's even got some of the same icons. So it's just 4 players, short rounds. I think it's maybe 3 minutes or 5 minutes max rounds. So it's kind of quick gameplay, which means that, it's only 4-player, but you can kind of quickly switch around and play with lots of different people. Sounds
amazing. I can imagine when the decision was made, wherever it was made and whenever it was made, to actually pull this game and not release it. Never in that person's wildest dreams did they think that in 23 years' time it would be playable online, because some genius somewhere decided, not only did they find it, but then they actually created the whole infrastructure from scratch to put it back on. Well, just to put it online. It's like, what? What? It just blows my mind that this kind of stuff happens. It's just so cool. Yeah, massive respect to people like Shoma who do this kind of thing.
I'm sure this has happened to other people, but I mentioned I'd moved house. When I show people the photos of my house, the room I'm in now is like a converted cellar that is just full of old video games. And some people see these photos and they're like, oh, what's all this stuff on the shelf? I'm like, oh, this is do you remember the Dreamcast? This is lots of Dreamcast games. And they're always like, oh, right, that's interesting. Now, imagine that conversation where you're like, oh, so what have you got down here? Oh, yeah, this is my equipment that I use to take unreleased games and make them playable online for up to about 50 other people like me around the world. They'd be like, what? Like, some of them are like, what Dream? I don't remember the Dreamcast at all. So it's like that. Do you know the skills and the expertise for such a project out of passion? It's mind blowing.
This gameplay kind of DD Planet kind of reminds me of. Is there a Saturn game where it has a tank game unlockable? Does anyone know?
I think it's either Quake or Duke Nukem, or it's one of the bottomy games.
Yeah, I remember the one you mean. Yeah, is it called Death Tank?
Yeah, it reminds me of that.
Okay, that's really cool about DD Planet coming back online. Speaking of online games, though, there's another game that's a new game, a completely new game. That's going to be online from the get-go. I don't know who wants to chat about this one. Did we say it was going to be Lozz again?
Sorry, I believe you're referring to Driving Strikers, unless you're in the know about another title.
No, I am indeed talking about Driving Strikers.
Yeah, so So another new online title, Driving Strikers. I think we've mentioned it before on the pod. We've certainly given it plenty of time on the blog as well. This is basically a car football game, Driving Strikers-esque. A bit of a rip-off, I suppose, but it's an indie title.
Not Driving Strikers. What's it called? Not Driving Strikers. It's called
Rocket League.
Rocket League. That's it. Yeah, I always forget that name. I don't know why.
Every time, Tom. There's no shame in that, really. Not what game is. But yeah, so this is an independent game that's being developed by Luke Benstead and David Reichart. I believe I may have butchered your second name there, David. I'm sorry. And they are producing this under the moniker of LD2K. And basically, they've already released a few demos for this previously, but on the 14th of October, they released a new demo that includes the online multiplayer element. And it's hard to overstate, really, what a phenomenal achievement that is. That they've not only produced an independent game for the Dreamcast themselves, but managed to create a server and get it up and running online. So I'd highly recommend you check it out. Yet again, it'll be another thing we can provide links to. They are planning on working this up into a full release, I think sometime next year, maybe Q1 next year. And, I've had a kind of sneak peek at the testing, helped out a little bit with the online testing, and Luke's just releasing new Gamma versions like every few days with improvements to the cars, to the controls, the cameras, everything. So I think it's a really exciting project, and I'm looking forward to the final version when it comes out. But for the time being, definitely give the demo a whirl.
Yeah, I love the way that, as you mentioned there, Luke and David are kind of releasing, like as you say, Gamma versions where they're actually taking on board the feedback from people. I remember when a few months back I did a video on YouTube about the Sega-powered Dreamcast special, which came with a demo disc from Wave Game Studios, and it had Driving Strikers on it. And I was saying in the video how poor I was at it because I couldn't work the controls out. And Luke he obviously jumped into the comments and was like, "Oh, this is how you do it." And it's just like, it's so cool that somebody's developing a game and they're asking the community for feedback and then actually implementing that feedback. Every little thing that people say, it's like, "Oh, that's an interesting take. I'll take that away and add it to the game." So it's really, really a good way of doing things. I love that the way that there's this kind of two-way dialogue between the sort of the audience and the developer. So that's really cool. I think I've said the word cool about 20,000 times on this podcast, so apologies for that. It's better than okie dokie. I used to always say okie dokie. I used to annoy myself with that. I've trained myself out saying okie dokie, but it's cool now. Everything's cool. So yeah, apologies for that, dear listener.
I personally think you should bring okie dokie back, Tom.
Yeah, I don't recall okie dokie. I'm well on board for that.
Yep.
Okay, well, maybe we'll do a poll or something, see if I should stay okie dokie more. I remember you went through a stage of saying that you were fine and dandy on the pod, Lewis, so maybe we could get that back in as well.
I said it once and then you repeated it. And it became an unofficial catchphrase.
I'm going to get a t-shirt with just "I'm dandy" on it, with like your face or something.
Mm-hmm. With Desperate Dan.
Yeah. FND, I think.
FMD. Speaking of Wave Game Studios, we can't really say too much about this because we don't really know what it is, but on their website, again, links will be in the description, but it might have expired by the time we put this podcast out. They're teasing this thing called Something Special on their website, on their store. For those people who don't know, Wave Game Studios is a publisher that is now putting out a lot of the new indie Dreamcast games, and also I think he's going to be putting out Driving Strikers in the near future. If you go on their website, go into the shop section, there's it's just called Something Special, and it's completely free shipping, and you just click on it, put your shipping details in, and then this Something Special will arrive in the post. We don't know what it is. We've had some speculation of what it might be, but we don't actually know. So yeah, by all means, head to the link in our show notes and see if it's still available, see if you can get that something special. No doubt we'll talk about it on another podcast in the future. I'll put something up on the blog when we do find out what it is. But yeah, very, very, very exciting. And that leaves us really just to talk about our final thing, which is a live event that we're going to be at. The first one since before COVID. I think the last live event we were actually at was Play Expo Blackpool in 2018. I think it was. That was when you were there, Kev.
I was there, yes.
And Adam Korolick was really jealous of your bootleg Dreamcast T-shirt that you made yourself.
I've had to block him on Twitter because he keeps DMing me.
But that was a crazy event. That I just remember spending quite a bit of time with DJ Slopes from Slopes Games Room and Adam Korolick. And I was just like, this is weird. I've watched these guys on YouTube and now I'm just kind of sat here sort of chatting about nonsense with them. So yeah, the new event I'm talking about is Nottingham Video Game Expo, or let me get the proper name, it's Notts Game Expo. Again, we will put links in the description, but we will be there, as will people like the aforementioned Wave Game Studios. Sega Powered are going to be there. I think Rare are going to be there as well, of GoldenEye fame. Sega Mags. You can see all the people who are going to be there, all the guests on the website, which we will link to. And yeah, it's just going to be a really good fun. Oh, the Retro Hour are there as well. Everyone knows who the Retro Hour is. So that's really cool. And that will be on the 17th and 18th of December. We're only going to be there on the 17th. But what we will have is a nice display where you can come and play some Dreamcast games, come and chat to us. We're also going to have a bit of a sort of competition, which we're running in collaboration with Bitmap Bureau. So you can potentially win some Bitmap Bureau or Xeno Crisis goodies, maybe a game or two. I've still not spoken to them properly about what they're going to give me, but I'm sure they are going to give us some stuff. So watch this space. But yeah, you can come and play some Xeno Crisis and potentially win some cool prizes as well. So yeah, that's Not Game Expo, and again, I'll put the links in the show notes. So hopefully we'll see you there.
I think the biggest announcement, though, Tom, that you've missed is that I have got a new bootleg T-shirt just for that event.
I look forward to it. But to be honest, I don't know if you can actually outdo the one you did last time. That's well, some feat.
It's not just that. I'm going to be wearing my bootleg T-shirt, and I'm also going to be pretending to be you while selling bootleg copies of Millennium Racer, or whatever it was called, and be like, yeah, I made this. Check the Eurogamer article.
A printout of the Eurogamer article.
Yeah, there we go.
Brilliant. Right, so that pretty much brings all the news to a close. That was a pretty packed episode. I think you'll agree. I think we should just round off now and just talk about or pimp some of the recent articles that have gone up on the blog. Kev, you did a rather excellent retrospective on Netto Golf. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so if people don't know this, it is the only other golf game you can access other than Tee Off Golf / Golf Shiyoyo, which I hope I've pronounced correctly. It's a kind of, I believe I described it as like a cutesy character level game, but it's a really, really good game, quite varied courses. We've got a video up of this as well. Got some unlockables to go along, and you've got to like level up your license by winning events to unlock the next event, unlock the next clubs. So if you are a sports fan, or you're into slightly niche Dreamcast games, this is definitely worth a shout. You can play this, or you can get this for about £15 still, because I had a little check. It was NTSCJ, so it's Japan only, but you don't need any type of language skills to work this. You can use this or play this with Google Translate off your phone. Once you've got through the menus, which it does a really good job of translating, you're basically just playing a golf game. So
I thought that the most interesting thing that you added to your, well, not the most interesting, but one of the really interesting things you added to your article was that you found like some person's old blog from years and years ago that had like translated the menus just so people could get into the game. Yeah, I wonder if they know. Yeah,
I wished I could remember the name of those people. They were, and it was a couple who were made up of an Italian and a Japanese lady, from what I remember. or a lady who was of Japanese descent and could speak it, and they translated about 7 mostly obscure games, of which this was one of them. So it was one of those games that I bought.
Just a minute, I'm checking. No, sorry, carry on. I
was just going to say, it was one of those ones that I bought with just the intention of having a go of it. And then once I got it, I was like, well, I wonder if there's any info on this. And that was one of the first hits of like, they've absolutely dominated the SEO on that search term. So their out-of-date blog.
Kirameki, it's called. That's the name of the blog.
And it's got, if you're just a fan of old websites, go and have a look, because it is I would describe it as a kind of HTML masterpiece.
Isn't it? God, look at that green, that lurid green background. Wow, that is retina destroying. Amazing, great stuff. Cool. Lewis, I'm going to talk about one of your recent masterpieces next. You spoke to the lead singer of a band called Brave Little Abacus.
Yeah.
And you tell us about the article. It's a fantastic entry.
Okay, yeah. So there's a band called Brave Little Abacus that existed, and then they didn't exist. And after they didn't exist, everyone really liked them, and their album went viral. And kind of for that reason, they didn't really have a presence on the internet. And so they've always been a little bit mysterious, maybe less so now, because Adam, the lead singer, has kind of done a few interviews on podcasts and stuff. And yeah, so basically I was just looking up about them, and it turns out that they used to use a Dreamcast when they performed live. So instead of a drummer, they would have a CRT TV with a Dreamcast playing backing tracks off a CD. Yeah, and then also on their songs, they sample various video game things like Sonic and not the Dreamcast version, but they do sample Marvel vs. Capcom on one of their tracks as well off their album that everyone likes. And so I really wanted to just talk to Adam about this, and he was so gracious to actually just answer all these questions. And then the cherry on top was, just as a little bit extra, I was like, hey, do you think you could see if you could find some photos from back in 2009 where they performed with a Dreamcast? Because it'd be really good to obviously have that as a visual representation of what he was describing. And he was like, I'll give it a go. I'm gonna have to dig really deep. And then I was out in town, and I got this email on my phone. He's like, I found some photographs, and I was absolutely buzzing. So amazing. Yeah, it's a obscure article, but it was a lot of fun to write.
Oh mate, the more obscure the better for the Junkyard. Yeah, and these photographs are they're almost like exclusives, aren't they? They've never really been seen before. So yeah,
I think Lozz made a funny comment about how they look like they're from 2009, when it was they look like something a band would have uploaded to their MySpace back then. Yeah, that kind of quality.
It's kind of odd. It feels kind of odd to reading your article, Lewis, and looking at those photos made me feel nostalgic, and then it hit me. It was it felt strange to be feeling nostalgic for 2009, but I suppose it's getting to that point now. 13 years ago, I was just starting university at that point, and it made me kind of dig through some old records. But I'd never actually listened to this band, but I did. I did give the album that was the kind of breakout album, the popular one that was mentioned in the article. I've been given that a listen. So, I really enjoyed it.
Nice.
I was just going to ask Lewis, what would you rather own? Would you rather own the Dreamcast that they used live on stage, or would you rather own the Dreamcast signed by Fred Durst?
Those are both good for separate reasons.
That's what I think the Wave special giveaway is.
No.
One of those Fred Durst.
You've ruined it. Why?
Bloody hell, what do I want with this? I'll get a new shell. I'll put a new shell on it. It'll be fine.
This isn't answering your question, Kev, but the console I do want that's signed by someone is, if you Google it, there's these original Xboxes that were signed by both Blink-182 and Green Day. I really want one of them. Yeah.
That'd be cool. Awesome. That's a great article, Lewis. Lozz, you wrote one recently about this VCD, this All About Dreamcast VCD. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a VCD, and it's all about the Dreamcast.
Okay, next. So, what's the story behind it? I mean, what actually? What is this thing?
Basically, it's. I've had this kind of weird interest in how the Dreamcast was marketed and received, and how it all kind of went down in regions that are outside of the main markets, so outside of Europe, North America, and Japan. And occasionally you come across these items from, Poland or Russia or Hong Kong, Taiwan, and they always just fascinate me. And basically, I just found this VCD, Chinese language VCD, and realised there was not a single word written about it online, no scans, nothing. And so I just thought I would, rip the VCD and put it up. We put it up on the Dreamcast Junkyard YouTube channel for everybody to see. And I don't think there's anything all that remarkable in there, but it's just a kind of cool piece of history, I suppose.
Yeah, it's preservation, isn't it? Essentially, it's digital preservation, which is something I really, really enjoy talking about because I'm a terrible bore. But it's a really cool piece, and I appreciate you took the time to do that. One last mention for the article I wrote, which was about the Gauntlet Legends pewter miniatures. In the United States, Gauntlet Legends for the Dreamcast, and I think for the other consoles as well, had this free offer where you could send away for these miniatures. I'd seen the advert on the front of the manual, but I'd never really thought much about it. I wrote an article about it years ago, just saying, "Oh, this is odd. I wonder if anyone's ever got these." Turns out a few people had, because people had commented on it, but I just hadn't seen the comments. Then fast forward to 2022, Derek Pascarella was looking on eBay. Weirdly, typed in Dreamcast Junkyard, and somebody had listed these pewter miniatures as the word Dreamcast Junkyard, or the words Dreamcast Junkyard. So obviously, Derek let Lewis know, Lewis let me know. I then said to Derek, buy these for me because they were super cheap, which he did. So thank you, Derek Pascarella. He sent them to me, and I wrote a big, long, meandering blog post about the history of these pewter miniatures, which were given away for free to anybody who bought Gauntlet Legends back in the day. So yeah, again, it's a very niche and very esoteric topic, but that's what we're all about here on the Dreamcast Junkyard. We just love the maybe not as esoteric as VG Esoterica, also been on the podcast in the past.
Yeah.
But we love that.
I feel like you left out the detail, Tom, that me and Derek were kind of bemused, like, oh, why is it called Dreamcast Junkyard? And then you were like, I've got an article about this. You knew exactly what they were immediately, and that's why you purchased them. So yeah.
Yeah. So the story is, I don't want to spoil the article, but I'm going to say it anyway. The person who owned them didn't know what they were, had Googled them, found an image, been somehow drawn to my article about them, and then listed them as Dreamcast Junkyard. So in a way, it was almost like cyclical. Me writing that article back in 2015, however it was, allowed this person who had these things in their possession to find out kind of what they were, and then put them on eBay and call them the Dreamcast Junkyard. So it's really, really bizarre. But if you'd like to read that, dear listener, there will be a link, as again, I've said several times, in the show notes. So do check them out. Right, I think that's going to do it for this episode. Gentlemen, we've got through a lot, and we've done it successfully. Well, semi-successfully. It just remains for me to say thank you. Thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in to this episode of the DreamPod. Thank you to you fine gentlemen who have joined me on this podcast. Let's go around the table, the virtual table, and talk about where we can be found on the internet. As a collective, first of all, we can be found on the internet at www.thedreamcastjunkyard.co.uk. We can be found on Twitter at the DC Junkyard, or we could be found at the DC Junkyard. We've had a little bit of an issue with our Twitter account, so if you go to that handle and it's not there at the moment, check out the DC Junkyard UK. That's our temporary one while we wait to get our existing one reinstated. It's a long story, don't ask. Gentlemen, where can you be found? Lewis, where can you be found on the internet?
You can find me at LewisJFC on Twitter, and read all my writing on the Junkyard website.
Fantastic. Kev, where can people find you?
I've had a bit of a shutdown, but I'm going to promote an account that I started as a joke. You can watch. If you're interested in watching my Football Manager save that is in the year 2040-41, you can find it on YouTube at the Tactics Board Manager. You might think, this is a very weird joke, even for Kev. It's not a joke. I made a YouTube channel for highlights of it to send to my friends. I've now got 3 followers or 3 subscribers, which upsets me because this morning when I checked it, I had 4. So I've lost one since I got a video up.
Know your audience, Kev. Know your audience. Lozz, where can people find you?
For the time being, you can find me on Twitter for I'm at lgoodchild_UK. It's mostly boring tweets about my work though. So follow me if you desire to see that kind of thing.
You can't find me on Twitter because I don't use it. And that will do it for this particular episode of the DreamPod. Thank you very much for listening, and we will see you next time.
Please stop this disc now.
Yeah,
It is,
it
yeah.
reminds me of that. Also, Lawrence is just gone. I think he's disconnected. Hold on, I'll message him.
Did such a good roundup that he's just dropped the mic and walked off.
He's like, that's it, I'm done now, I'm finished. You'll be able to edit this bit out, won't you?
Yeah, of course.
I say leave it in. That was the funniest thing I've ever said on a pod.
I don't know why I just said to him, you've disconnected. That's a bit of a...
That's a very British message, Lewis.
Yeah.
It's like when someone arrives at your house soaking wet and you're like, oh no, is it raining?